Hey there. I wanted to hop on and film my 17-month VBAC story because when I became pregnant with baby number 2, I looked all over the place for successful stories from women who had positive VBAC experiences, and I couldn't find a whole lot, especially in the time frame of 18 months and under. So maybe one day some mama's gonna benefit from my story, or just maybe find it interesting. So I'm gonna start with pregnancy number 1. I became pregnant, obviously, and at the time I had just finished my yoga instructor certification. So I was all into the yoga, the meditation, the positive affirmations, and I wanted, ideally, to have a birth that was as natural as possible. Though I did want to have it at the hospital, just because we didn't have any family or friends around and I didn't feel comfortable doing a home birth. All the power to you. If you've done a home birth, that's so incredible. Anyways, for me, it was gonna be a hospital birth with a doula, and yeah, just as natural as I could go. So in the little town where I was living, there were no midwives, unfortunately. There were only doctors, and so I joined a doctor's co-op just to, check in on my pregnancy. It was a healthy pregnancy, low risk. And the doctors were lovely, but it wasn't what I needed at the time. It was very clinical, and I often would ask questions. Oh, like, why do you give a baby a vitamin K shot? Or, do I need to take that diabetes screening test? And the doctors didn't love when I asked all those questions, at least these particular doctors. So I switched to midwifery care in a bigger city. It was about an hour away. But after meeting with the midwives once, it was just totally what I needed for my birth. So I'm not bashing either route. You got to do what works for you. And at the time, I'd go to the midwife's office, sit on their couch. It was like I was having a conversation, and they would tell me the pros and cons about anything I asked. So basically went full term, 41 weeks, went into labor, and to make a long story short, after what seemed like an eternity, it was probably only 22 hours, I was labeled failure to progress. A couple times in the labor, the baby's heart rate went a little funky, so they put me into an emergency C-section. And yeah, I only got to 5 centimeters, so that was really discouraging for me. And I remember talking to my midwife after birth and just feeling so broken because I had a C-section, and that was something I wasn't even contemplating as a reality. I wanted to try to go natural and it didn't work, and I really felt like a huge failure. And it was all part of the learning experience. I had put an affirmation up on my mirror that said, I surrender to the process of birth. I surrender to the birthing experience. Kind of essentially. And I guess that was part of what my lesson was, going through this C-section. Again, not that it's wrong or bad, but just for me at the time, how I personally felt was like there was a big element of failure. I didn't do my best, something went wrong. So I asked my midwife at the time, what am I gonna do if I have another baby? And she said, you're gonna do nothing. You're gonna just go with the flow, you're gonna roll with it, and let go of your expectations. So I took those words with me. I had a healthy little baby boy, and when he was 7 months old, my husband and I, we always knew we wanted to have 2 kids close together, if possible. And so we decided to just be irresponsible and see what happened. I got pregnant again. So hello, the little guy's over here making squawks, if you can hear him. Hi. So I took the midwife's words to heart and just kind of rolled with it. I gave them a call and asked if I would have to, go to a medical doctor because my babies would only be 17 months apart. Because they had warned me or told me if you have your kids under 18 months apart, there's a really good chance you're gonna need a C-section. So when I called the midwives, they told me, hoopala, sorry baby. They told me I could be under their care for the first 6 months, and then at the 6-month point, I would be referred to an OBGYN, a baby doctor, and the doctor would give me a consultation, kind of look at my scar, look at my individual case, and tell me what's recommended. So 6 months comes along, I don't know what to do. Do I want a C-section? Do I want to try for a VBAC? The doctor was great. She just gave me statistics and she didn't sway me either way, which I really appreciated and respected. So some of the stats for my particular case were, because I was diagnosed or labeled, whatever you call it, with failure to progress, there would be a 50% chance I'd have a successful VBAC. 50% chance it would be another C-section. The other thing she told me was that, of course, if you have your babies under 18 months apart, you're at a higher risk of a uterine rupture. I'm not an expert, so I'm not going to go into details, but if you Google uterine rupture, you can see for yourself. There can be some really intense ramifications if your uterus ruptures in labor. Luckily, she also told me the full story about a C-section. She didn't just make it sound like a C-section would be the easy route, because there were risks of getting your bowel nicked or your bladder nicked, risks for the baby, risks for future pregnancies. So either way, I was going into it very sober-mindedly, knowing shit can go wrong. I went home that night, and unfortunately, I got so anxious, just because, I don't know, I felt like I didn't trust my body. Everything went wrong the first time. I didn't have this confidence in myself, in the wisdom of my body, which typically or previously I did trust. And then knowing the statistics and risks either way, I was having anxiety. If I'm honest, I thought I was gonna die, which maybe isn't logical, but I thought the worst case scenario would happen either way. So I went back to the midwives. I didn't make a decision right away. I didn't sign up with the OBGYN for a new C-section or whatever, for another C-section. And everything worked out perfectly in terms of meeting with the midwives, because it was a midwife in this particular midwifery practice that I didn't really know well. I hadn't really dealt with her before, and my husband was also with me at this appointment. And she told me her own personal story. She had a C-section planned. She went into labor early and then decided, heck, I'm going with a vaginal birth, not doing the C-section. And I didn't know you could do that. I was just uneducated about it. And she told me the best thing she could have. She said it was my decision, and I did not have to make a decision right now, which was at 6 months pregnant. I could wait till the day I went into labor, and if I wanted a C-section that day, well, we'll try to accommodate it. Or if I signed up for a C-section and then decided, you know what, I'm gonna try a vaginal birth, that was totally acceptable as well. So just giving me space was amazing. And then I, kind of went back to the words of my first midwife after my C-section, where she said, just roll with it. And of course there's benefits to planning a C-section or benefits to planning things, but for me at this point in my life, the just rolling with it was working, and that is not typical. I don't usually just roll with it. Maybe that's the lesson I have to learn, or am trying to learn. So people thought I was crazy when they'd ask, oh, are you having a C-section? Are you doing a vaginal birth? I was like, I don't know. We're just gonna see how it goes. You nuts? No. Anyways, when it came time for my birth, this little guy was 1 day early, so the full 40 weeks. I basically went into labor on a Wednesday night at 8 p.m. And the midwives told me to call them when I had 511. So that means 1 minute contractions every 5 minutes for an hour. That would be like active labor. By definition, give them a call. So I had active labor for 2 hours, 511, from 2 till 4 in the morning, called them, but I could talk through my contractions. So the midwife said she'd come and check me, or because I could still talk through the contractions, I could continue laboring at home and we could wait a couple hours, see how it went. So I said, let's just wait. I don't want a repeat of my first birth where I'm at the hospital forever and ever not progressing. I live 2 minutes from the hospital, so that's a perk. So she told me if I wanted, I could take a Tylenol and a Gravol, try to sleep, because I'd been up for 24 hours. I would need some sleep. So I did that, and it knocked me out. I would sleep for like 15-20 minutes and then be woken up by a really intense contraction. So that was positive, because I could at least rest a little bit and rejuvenate. The midwives called me at 7 in the morning and said, hey, what's up? What's happening? We haven't heard from you. And I told them my contractions were all sporadic and all over the place. So the labor had slowed down, which was so discouraging for me. So after laboring at home all day, not all day, it was 3 in the afternoon, I started having the most intense contractions of my life, mooing like a cow. It happened. And then I went into our bedroom where the baby's cradle was, and I just started crying. And I was like, I can't do this. This is way more intense than my first labor. I went and got my husband and just said to him, I can't keep laboring. I'm not having this 5-1-1 thing that's stuck in my head. I'm thinking I'm not in real active labor. I want to call the midwife. I have to have a C-section. Like, I can't do this. It's not in me. So my husband was my biggest support. He's like, baby, whatever you want, whatever you're feeling, I'm going to go with it. So we called the midwife. I couldn't talk through my contractions. And she said we should meet at the hospital because I was probably in active labor. I was having contractions at that point every 2 minutes, and they were lasting 20 seconds. So I didn't realize that was the real McCoy. I thought it was just some junk. I don't know. Went to the hospital, and I was 6 centimeters dilated. Yay! That's way further than I got with baby number 1. So that was a huge win or inspiration. We had previously talked, the midwife and I, about signing up for an epidural, because the biggest thing, at least at our hospital, is that if you have a uterine rupture, they want to get you an epidural and then get you into the OR room. So if I already had an epidural, we wouldn't need to worry about the anesthesiologist not being available. It would just be a matter of them getting me into the OR room if something went wrong. So, sorry, Papa. I was pumped. I was going to get an epidural. So I thought. What ended up happening was they took my blood work to see if I would qualify for the epidural and told me it would take a full hour for the anesthesiologist to come in and actually hook me up with the meds. Little did I know, my wonderful midwife told my husband I was progressing really well, really quickly. It could very well be that I would get so far along I wouldn't even be able, I wouldn't even be able to get the epidural. So that's what happened. Luckily, there was laughing gas in the room. It was so cool. I felt like I was smoking. I'm not a smoker of cigarettes or weed, but it was just this, I thought I was some like rebel kid in high school. I don't know. Rocking out the laughing gas, which just helped to take the kind of stress out of my mind, and it helped to just chill my body out slightly. And yeah, we were admitted, like I said, around 4:30. Actually, I don't think I said that. We went to the hospital, got admitted around 4:30. By 7:30, this chubby chicken was born. So it was an uncomplicated birth. It was, other than the laughing gas, medication free, and it just went totally smoothly and way better than I expected. So I had the kind of like security blanket or comfort of being at the hospital in case there was an emergency. But I'm just so grateful for my awesome midwife and my husband, because both of them kind of had faith in me or my body or my ability, even when I didn't think I could do it, didn't have any kind of faith and confidence in myself. So in a nutshell, that is my 17-month VBAC story. And yeah, it's my little munchkin.